Hello and welcome. I'm Catalina Marchant de Abreu and you're watching W News. Broadcasting live from the Arabiya studios, these are our top stories. Trump launches his Board of Peace in Davos with 19 countries, but UK and Europe voiced concerns over Russia's involvement and Greenland tensions. Zelenskyy tells Davos nothing has changed in Ukraine as he criticizes Europe's inaction and questions NATO's effectiveness. The horror film Sinners and actor Timothée Chalamet break Oscar nomination records as this year's contenders for the 98th Academy Awards are announced. Donald Trump has launched his new Board of Peace in Davos during the World Economic Forum, with 19 countries signing on to address global conflicts, starting with Gaza. Some nations, including the UK, are holding off joining over concerns about Russia's potential role in the board. The initiative comes amid tensions over Trump's comments on Greenland and trade, adding strain to relations with European allies. Take a listen to what he had to say.
It's going to be a great plan, and that's where the Board of Peace really started. And I think we can spread out to other things as we succeed with Gaza. We're going to be very successful in Gaza. It's going to be a great thing to watch, and we can do other things. We can do numerous other things. Once this board is completely formed, we can do pretty much whatever we want to do, and we'll do it in conjunction with the United Nations. You know, I've always said the United Nations has got tremendous potential, has not used it.
For more on this, I'm joined from New York by Rachel Ziemba, founder of Ziemba Insights. Thank you for joining us today, Rachel.
Thanks, Catalina. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Now, Trump's Board of Peace was one of the flashiest announcements made at Davos. From your own perspective and from what you've been seeing, what role could this group that he's put together realistically play in stabilization and investment? And how is the private sector going to respond to it?
Catalina, I think that those are all really good questions that, in my mind, haven't been answered yet by this sort of big announcement. Now, Trump often makes large announcements and then takes opportunistic policies. His son-in-law, Jared Kushner, gave a speech at Davos talking about how private sector investment was going to be the key of rebuilding Gaza. But private sector actors are going to be waiting for security. They're going to be waiting for returns. And there's real uncertainty about what will happen to the people of Gaza and what will happen in the context of reducing Hamas's role. In a way, in my mind, this expansion to potentially work on other conflicts by broadening it may actually distract from the goal here. And as you say, the absence of some key leaders, many NATO members is a bit of a red flag and a question mark about whether it will just be headlines or whether there will be action that stabilizes the region.
And Rachel, I think we were all a bit scared that perhaps Trump was going to escalate things at Davos. This was something to look out for. But now it does seem that the mood at Davos ended on a better note than it started, partly because thanks to Trump pulling back on Greenland, stepping back from tariff threats and military action, for example. So how significant is this for de-escalating tensions, and what does it mean for global investors in the near term?
Yeah, so I think in a way, this is a reminder and vindication maybe for Klaus Schwab and the proponents of Davos about why having a place for global leaders to meet, and corporate ones as well, can lead to deals being done. We know Trump likes to escalate to de-escalate. Maybe there was some timing there, but I think even if this is added to the laundry list of the tariffs that Trump has not implemented, he's threatened but not implemented, as well as those he has, I think there is a lot of trust lost within NATO and with key allies from this episode. From an investor standpoint, I think a number of large institutional investors in Europe and around the world continue to look and say, maybe we don't want to have our US treasuries unhedged. Maybe we need to invest more at home, particularly as one of the lessons from this episode in Europe, in places like Canada, will be that they need to invest more on the defense industrial base. So we may see more home bias of investment, and we may see more competition for capital. So US equities, especially the tech-oriented ones, may still do well, but US interest rates are likely to stay high, and that may have implications even for borrowing rates in the GCC as well as around the world.
And Trump's Greenland comments and this tariff withdrawal have already moved and destabilized markets and sparked questions about this US-European economic relations. Macron even mentioned a potential trade bazooka in response. We saw that this week. So what impact could this Greenland episode actually have on transatlantic cooperation and global investment confidence? Because I don't think the parties involved will actually let this go that quickly.
No, and I think this is a time of more backup plans and scenario analysis, tabletop exercises. The bazooka, in a way, that Macron was referencing, this anti-coercion instrument that the EU created, they started work on it during the first Trump administration, and it was triggered by concerns about how both China and the US were putting too much pressure on the European Union. Now, the Europeans prepared tariffs last fall, but they didn't end up implementing them. So they are ready to go. In practice, it's always difficult for all of the EU or even the majority of the EU to agree on retaliation. But what I think this tells us is that the Europeans and other countries may be ready to do retaliation if their core interests are at stake. For now, I think we've stepped back from the brink of another trade war or a re-escalation of a trade war that was starting last year. But this will mean companies will have to be on edge about whether these tariff threats, whether investment threats could come back to the table. And I think we will see continued development of parallel markets and some fragmentation within sectors. And all of this is not going to be great for global growth. But there are countries more able to hedge that may be able to take advantage of it, of this dynamic. So nimbler, corporate interests as well spent a lot of time this week lobbying and asking for policy predictability. I'm not sure they're going to get it anytime soon, but that's definitely what the companies I speak to are looking for.
Rachel Ziemba, thank you so much for all this microeconomic insight on all of this geopolitical tornado we're living through.
Thank you.
Let's continue this conversation with former Norwegian MP Christian Tybring-Gjedde. Mr. Tybring-Gjedde, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. It does seem that the sides involved here may eventually have to find some kind of solution here, right? Because the United States doesn't seem to appear to be backing down from its interest in Greenland. If and as that pressure continues from the United States, you've actually put forward a proposal that might have been controversial in the past. You suggest a joint NATO protectorate for Greenland. So can you explain what you're proposing here and how it would work?
Well, I think that this should be done in diplomatic ways. And I think it's unfortunate that the U.S. president is bringing this up on his own behalf. And you need to have the diplomatic relations talking to Denmark and talking to the NATO nations. And I think it would be an idea to have a protectorate on Greenland by all 32 members of NATO, securing self-governance for the Greenlanders, and having also investments for defense equipment and all kinds of equipment you need to defend the Arctic and also defend Greenland. It means it's a win-win situation. And with regards to the minerals that may be there, I think it's important that these are being exploited as a NATO, and because all nations need those critical minerals for their own defense industries. And I think that would be a good idea. That will also mean that Greenland would benefit economically from this. And so I believe this could be a win-win situation. It's good for NATO, good for cooperation between the NATO nations, and it's good for the region, good for Denmark, and also good for Greenland.
So you've just mentioned it. How about we get more into this specifically, because you described this as a win-win situation or as a compromise solution. In practical, specific terms, what are the main benefits under this framework that you've just described? What would this look like for Greenlanders themselves, for Denmark, and for the United States?
Well, I believe that the United States is a part of NATO, and when you have 32 nations having to do this together, you get closer together. Right now, the NATO seems to be splitting apart, and it's you have Eastern Europe NATO nations, and you have the US, and then you have another part of Europe. I think we need to get together, and if you can do this together in order to protect Greenland and protect the Arctic together as an alliance, I think it's important in itself. And I think Greenlanders should be self-governed with local issues. They should take care of it themselves. And I think they should all benefit economically. With Denmark is one of 32 nations. Of course, they will have to change the relationship with Greenland doing this. But right now they are subsidizing Greenland, and they don't have to do this in the future because the investments and the jobs that are being created by joint investments by 32 nations mean that the economic situation for Greenland would be better. They get jobs, and they can all protect their culture, their history, and also their language. This should be no problem, but you have to do it in diplomatic ways, not to enforce this.
And you've also sent us a document where you've also pointed out to comments by former U.S. Vice President Mike Pence, where he is warning that Russian and Chinese activity in the Arctic pose a real security threat, and he justifies a stronger American role in Greenland. So based on the facts you've seen, do you believe there is a concrete threat from Russia or China in Greenland, or is that danger actually being perhaps overstated here to actually justify this greater U.S. control that we're discussing right now?
Well, I take it that President Trump take this as a security issue. He may be consider Greenland as something different, but I look at it security-wise, and I think China and Russia, if they're not there now, the submarines and ships in the near, but in the future, this is a good thing for all of Europe and all of the democratic of Europe to have this protection in Greenland. If they know they're there, know you're there, it will be very difficult for them to get closer. So I think it's a smart thing to do. And I know that missiles are going fast from the Kola Peninsula over Norway and also to the U.S. from the Kola Peninsula, meaning that Greenland could be in the way, and you can have this dome that President Trump is talking about, meaning that defense of the U.S. is strengthened by the dome on Greenland. But we should do this together because we are an alliance, not by one nation's doing it on its own.
Christian Tybring-Gjedde, thank you for joining us, and thank you for your perspective on the matter.
Thank you.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has addressed the World Economic Forum in Davos, saying nothing has changed on the ground in Ukraine. He criticized Europe's inaction as Russian oil continues to fund the war, while calling a U.S. backstop essential and questioning NATO's ability to act without American support. He spoke shortly after a private meeting with Donald Trump, which he described as productive and substantial. Meanwhile, Trump says peace talks are getting close, with U.S. envoys preparing to meet Russian leaders in Moscow. We can now speak to Defense and Secretary Analyst Tobias Ellwood. Tobias, thank you for joining us today.
Good afternoon.
Now, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff has expressed optimism that a peace deal to end the war in Ukraine is close, saying there's just one major issue left to resolve. The Kremlin, however, we've seen, has declined to comment on that optimism ahead of this meeting with President Putin. So why do you think Moscow is holding back from endorsing this progress mentioned by Witkoff? And what is this major issue left to resolve?
Well, we've had perhaps a bit of a pause in focusing on Ukraine, but it's thanks to Zelenskyy reminding us at Davos that this remains the central concern, security concern in Europe. And the war now goes on into its fourth year. And the reason why President Putin is confident that he can continue fighting is because he sees, as you've just been discussing, a real rift between America and Europe over NATO. And if NATO is split, then that gives him freedoms to pursue his strategies across Eastern Europe. We've not been able to put the fire out in Ukraine, partly because America has not been there fully committed to help Europe. So Putin is quite right to look at this deal and say, well, we can keep talking. I can go to summits in Alaska. I can join table discussions. I'll send my envoys everywhere. But the reality is the war will continue.
That's right. And at the same time, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are in Moscow and are set to meet with President Vladimir Putin while President Zelenskyy is talking with world leaders, including President Donald Trump, in Davos, which is so important, as you just mentioned. Do you think that these parallel diplomatic efforts will actually help accelerate the peace process between Russia and Ukraine? Realistically, should we actually expect a breakthrough anytime soon?
No, I think we really are being led down the garden path here by America and by Russia. Look at the bigger picture here. What is America after? It's not after solving the war to help Ukraine, to help a democratic country, part of Europe that's been invaded. He simply wants to have a better relationship with Moscow, to bring Putin in from the cold so he can strike a minerals deal with Putin. He's even invited Putin to join his curious board of peace. This is Europe's arch enemy. So this is the bigger picture geopolitical challenges that we face, which actually make solving the Ukraine war all the more complicated.
Exactly. And you just led us to our next question, Tobias. That is that President Trump says the war in Ukraine is turning out to be probably the most difficult conflict to resolve, even though he initially thought that it would be an easy one. So why do you think Ukraine has proven so much harder than expected?
Well, firstly, you've got to give it to the Ukrainians. They are resilient. They do not want to give up a fifth of their country to Russia, knowing that all Russia will do with us, if a peace deal is signed, is to arm and regroup, and in a couple of years' time, do it all over again. And that's the big thing that Donald Trump doesn't understand. And had America, and indeed Europe, not been so timid, risk-averse in sliding across the assets, the munitions, the F-16s, the tanks, and so on, in good time, then we certainly could have pushed Putin back. But we've been hesitant, we've been spooked by this language, but it's not been helped by a less than committed America in actually helping this problem in Europe, which will only get bigger because our world is becoming more unstable, and it's countries like Russia, and we can add China to this as well, that are taking advantage of a more destabilized globe.
And what do you think will be the outcome of this meeting between Steve Witkoff, Kushner, and Vladimir Putin? There's also reports about a trilateral meeting, perhaps, between the U.S., Ukraine, and Russia.
Well, how many times have you reported on another meeting in Moscow, or another meeting in Geneva, or another meeting in Washington about to cross the line and secure a deal? It isn't going to happen because this is all about terrain. I just mentioned the fifth of Ukraine that Russia wants to keep. Which president, Ukrainian president, would ever agree to that? And even if it's put to a referendum, has been suggested to the Ukrainian people, they won't accept it either. The answer to the challenge that we have here is to finally stand behind Ukraine, give them the long-range missiles that they need, give them the munitions they need on scale so they can actually hit targets at range in Russia, then allow Ukraine to win. Then we stand up to Russia, and then Russia won't be such a threat in places like Greenland, which Trump uses as an excuse to say that's why he wants to purchase that part of the world.
So perhaps the message here is to hold off on any type of optimism there. Thank you, Tobias Ellwood, for joining us and for all your insight today.
Thank you.
Let's take a look at some of the other stories making headlines today. The former girlfriend of pedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, is set to testify before a U.S. congressional committee next month. Maxwell, who is serving a 20-year prison sentence for recruiting and trafficking teens, received a summons from the committee in August. Another commuter train has crashed against a construction crane in the southeast of Spain, injuring one person. The accident, which follows two other collisions that killed at least 43 people, has sparked calls by a train drivers' union for a 3-day nationwide strike over safety standards. 2 people have died and several people are missing after landslides ravaged parts of New Zealand's east coast today. Rescue efforts are currently underway to find people trapped under rubble, but authorities say there have been no signs of life for hours. Australia's police are on search for a suspect that allegedly shot dead 3 people and left 1 person hospitalized. Local media are reporting that the incident, which occurred in a small town in New South Wales, is a domestic violence attack. Japan has restarted its first nuclear reactor since the Fukushima disaster of 2011. The government shut down all of the country's nuclear plants following the tsunami and meltdown 15 years ago. Now the energy-scarce country is restarting its nuclear assets as it eyes its carbon-neutral goals. Chris Gilbert reports.
15 years on from Fukushima, and the Tokyo Electric Power Company is rebooting its nuclear plants once more. The company, known as TIPCO, put the Kashiwazaki Kariwa reactor in Niigata Prefecture back online on Wednesday. It's a landmark moment for the country's return to nuclear power. TIPCO was also responsible for the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant, which melted down after the 2011 earthquake and tsunami. The restart of the nuclear plant in Niigata is a milestone in what the government says is part of the country's recovery.
The Kashiwazaki Kariwa plant is the first of TIPCO's nuclear reactors to go back online since the Fukushima disaster in 2011. TIPCO's been working hard to convince people in Niigata Prefecture in recent years that it's made upgrades to secure the plant from natural disasters.
Most of Japan's 33 reactors are on coastlines, and safety concerns about earthquakes and tsunamis remain. Local fire responders in Niigata have been drilling for an emergency.
We ensure that protective gear is worn securely and fits tightly. Next, speed is crucial. Our goal is to complete preparation and gear up as quickly as possible.
The memory of Fukushima is still raw for many. At least 20,000 people remain permanent evacuees from that disaster, and not all Niigata locals are won over by TIPCO's reassurances. Kazuyuki Takemoto remembers when the local plant was built.
I think the idea that TIPCO possesses immense power is an illusion. Especially after the Fukushima incident, the company is effectively bankrupt. The reason they seem to retain power is their collusion with politics. Their power is an illusion.
The restart still has a long way to go. One of the reactors at Kashiwazaki Kariwa isn't expected to come back online until 2030. 5 others may be decommissioned. Opponents say they will remain active to try and stop more reactors from opening in the future. Chris Gilbert, Arabiya English.
And Prince Harry has been in court again today, this time to support actress Elizabeth Hurley, who's also suing the publishers of the Daily Mail newspaper over alleged claims of unlawful information gathering. Elizabeth tearfully gave evidence saying her dining room was bugged. It comes after the prince had an emotional day giving evidence yesterday, saying the press made his wife's life a misery. Let's go live to Los Angeles to speak to royal commentator Kinsey Schofield. Kinsey, thank you for joining us today. So, as we just mentioned, Prince Harry became visibly emotional in court. He said that the Daily Mail made my wife's life an absolute misery. We've been reading a bit about that over the years. So from what we've seen so far, how big of a moment is this in his long-running battle with the British tabloids?
Well, it's completely irrelevant to the case. He doesn't meet Meghan Markle until well after these accusations he alleges take place. So the challenge for the court is that Meghan arrived well after that period, central to these claims. It's really irrelevant. What stood out in the courtroom to me was how often the judge had to intervene, reminding Prince Harry that his role was to answer questions, not to debate the lawyer. Several observers described his demeanor as defensive, sometimes hostile. And remember, this is not a jury case. This is a judge-driven case. So the judge will ultimately decide who wins. Harry should probably toe the line and make sure that he doesn't get on his bad side.
And Prince Harry also has long blamed the press for the 1997 car crash that killed his mother, Princess Diana. This trial is being described as the final chapter, perhaps, in his battle with the tabloids, especially after winning an apology from Rupert Murdoch's British newspapers last year. So how much do you think this case represents as personal closure for Prince Harry?
Whether he wins this case or not, my hope is that it brings him a sense of closure, allowing him to focus on the future and the family he's built for himself in California. He is sacrificing irreplaceable time with his children right now to pursue this, and that reality should not be overlooked.
Yes, and Prince Harry isn't the only claimant here. There's figures like Elton John's husband, David Furnish, Elizabeth Hurley, as we reported earlier, who are also involved, amongst others. With all of these high-profile people taking action, what can these lawsuits really achieve? Is it mostly about personal justice for them, or could it actually change how the press operates in the UK?
The press operates dramatically different in the UK today than, first of all, there has been no tangible evidence presented at this time that these claims are true. In past cases involving Prince Harry, we've seen proof of bugs. We've seen proof of somebody hacking a phone call. We haven't seen that so far. This is all their word. Until we see that, I think that it's hard for us to make a judgment in this particular case. But the British media, and according to the Daily Mail, their reporters had intense sources. There are pictures of Rebecca English hobnobbing with Prince Harry on polo fields, and that's one of the people he's accusing. So I think that the British press has straightened out quite a bit since 2013, to be quite honest with you. And if we're taking Prince Harry's word for it, it is about holding those previous individuals accountable.
Yes, and how much of a turning point, Kinsey, could this court testimony be in what's the broader fight for accountability in the press, especially UK tabloids, which have a history of being so brutal? So what actually makes this case stand out?
The high-profile celebrities that are attached to it, the amount of high-profile celebrities that are attached to it. We'll have to wait and see what the verdict is. With Harry and Meghan specifically, Harry being the one involved, these are not very sympathetic characters. Harry wrote an entire book invading his family's privacy. So, you have to sit back and wonder if a judge is really feeling sympathy for Prince Harry when he's watched Harry sell secrets from his own family. The judge is going to, I imagine, judge everyone at the same time based on specific tidbits, but it's really a wait and see situation at this point in time.
And Elizabeth Hurley, we reported, also testified today. So what has she said in court, and how does it compare to Prince Harry's testimony? Perhaps she has a bit more sympathy from the audience and from the court?
Yeah, I think that Elizabeth Hurley does generate a lot more sympathy than Prince Harry does. And she has specific instances. She's giving specific examples. We'll have to see if her team actually has that tangible proof, and it's not just her saying, I felt like this was going on. Prince Harry said, well, they had to be listening to my phone calls. My friends simply wouldn't link. Elizabeth Hurley has a little bit more credibility, I believe, but we have not seen any tangible evidence as of yet.
Kinsey Schofield, thank you so much for your reporting on this.
Thank you.
Now, the nominations for this year's Oscars have been announced in Los Angeles. The 98th Academy Awards will take place in March, and the horror film Sinners is up for a record number of 16 nominations, whilst actor Timothée Chalamet has also made Oscars history after receiving a Best Actor nomination for his role in Marty Supreme. It makes him the youngest man to be nominated in the category 3 times. Now let's get the latest with showbiz reporter at the Daily Mail, Stephanie Tecci. Stephanie, glad to have you back on the program again. Last time we were talking about the Golden Globes. Now talk us through the Oscars.
Well, it is very exciting, and we've had some amazing headlines that have come out. Like Sinners has been the real star of the show today. 16 nomination. It smashed all records, including for Titanic, which had 14, and La La Land. But you know what's been so surprising and quite shocking is Sinners belongs into the horror genre, and that's usually a genre that doesn't really do well for the Academy. But I feel like this film defines, even expands more than the horror genre. Like, it's technically daring, it's socially charged, and also the performances from people like Michael B. Jordan, it's of a prestige level. And if we're talking about money for the genre now, we're looking, it banked $368 million worldwide. So I think all of the nominations are definitely credible for this film. But I'm not getting excited too soon, because what happens, we hear films like this in the past, they rack up the nominations, and then on the night they might pick up at best 5 or 6, but it has done well so far to be recognized for 16 of these nominations.
And there's also lots of talk of Timothée Chalamet, who's also made history as the youngest man ever to earn the Best Actor's Oscar nomination, this time for his role in Marty Supreme. So with so much buzz around this performance, do you think this could finally be the year that he wins an Oscar?
There's so much buzz around Timothy at the moment, and I do feel like the industry are ready to crown him as actor at the Best Actor at the Oscars. I think, you know, I watched Marty Supreme over the weekend, and I feel like there's just been this real progression for Timothée Chalamet. He's really come into his own as an actor. This is quite an authoritative role. He's quite mature, and I think compared to the other 2 times when he tried, this is a film where you can really see that he's come into his own as an actor. But he does have stiff competition. He's facing stiff competition from Leonardo DiCaprio, Ethan Hawke. So these are the big Hollywood heavyweights. But I think the Academy is ready to crown a new fresh face.
And there's also been some snubs, Stephanie. Talk us through the ones that have actually caught your eye this time around.
Oh, the Oscars have been snubbing too much this year. Let's talk about Wicked. Now, Wicked in the box office, it's made $524 million, but the film did not even get a single nomination. So as you can imagine, Wicked fans, in particular Ariana Grande's fans, they have been going crazy on social media, saying that she should have received a nomination. Likewise, her co-star Cynthia Erivo has not received a nomination. It's such a big film. It's done well for cinemas, but we always find when it comes to Academy, these kind of films just fall flat. But it is a fall from grace for the film, because last year it had a staggering 10 nominations, and not to receive one this year is pretty shocking. Also, Gwyneth Paltrow, I thought she done well in Marty Supreme. She stars alongside Timothée Chalamet. It's been 10 years since we've seen her on screen, and again, she didn't get a nomination. And And Avatar, again, another film that's done amazing in the box office, is raised $1.3 billion, but it's only got technical nominations and none for Best Picture, which was quite shocking as well. So, you know, when we see these big blockbusters, we always think that they will do well on the night or even get nominations, but that just hasn't happened this year.
And Stephanie, we can't talk about the Oscars without talking about Leonardo DiCaprio, of course, and his film One Battle After Another that is set up for multiple nominations, including acting, directing, technical. After finally winning his first Oscar for The Revenant, this was in 2020, what is it about this role that has the Academy recognizing him across so many categories?
I think it's three big things. I think, you know, Leo, he's moved away from his baby boy charm that we see him on screen for. In this film, it's full of political intensity, emotional intensity, physical intensity. And I think what the Academy likes to see, especially for Leonardo DiCaprio, is when he takes those roles and he really transports the viewer to another world where you don't even think that is Leonardo DiCaprio on screen. And I think that he's done that very well. And I think for those three main areas of that emotional intensity that we see him deliver with this character is amazing. I think it could be his year, but as I said, he has a stiff battle from Timothée Chalamet. But I think it's so nice that he's been recognized for this role because he's only had one Oscar, and I think he needs a bit more. I think this is one of the films that he definitely deserves it for.
And this I found interesting, Stephanie, you mentioned to us before, the Academy appears to be embracing international films more than ever this year. For example, Brazilian cinema has also been a standout, with Wagner Moura winning Best Actor at the Golden Globes already with his film The Secret Agent that earned multiple Oscar nominations. Do you think this points to a real shift towards recognizing global cinema at the Oscars?
It's been a long time coming. I think before, when we used to look at the international categories at the Oscars, they just used to be that kind of flimsy category that no one would take seriously now. But global cinema, I would say, has saved the film industry with the amount of money that's being pumped in from the Middle East, Africa, South America. All of these are big industry, which is not only producing talent, but it's also producing finance for the industry, which is dwindling. And I think a lot of these subtitle films now, even you're getting so many English viewers who just want to watch them because the storylines are so gripping. So I think for once now, Hollywood has woken up and said, actually, it's about time we give the international talent the credit where it's due. And also the people who are voting now, about 20 to 25% of the members now are international. So now that we've increased the membership for international Academy voters, it means we're going to be seeing these kind of films highlighted more.
Stephanie Tecci, thank you for joining us as always, and please do come back with all the updates.
I will be back.
Now let's take a look at the top business news. Gold steady today after a more than a 1% fall after President Trump scaled back his EU tariff threats. The precious metals performance follows the Goldman Sachs optimistic view that prices for 2026 will be up by $5,400. American billionaire Jeff Bezos plans to launch more than 5,000 satellites to create a new internet network which will compete with Elon Musk's Starlink. The network, which will be rolled out next year, is expected to have a speed of as much as 6 terabytes per second, which is faster than rival services. And now a reminder of our top stories. Trump launches his Board of Peace in Davos with 19 countries, but UK and Europe voice concerns over Russia's involvement and Greenland tensions. Zelenskyy tells Davos nothing has changed in Ukraine as he criticizes Europe's inaction and questions NATO's effectiveness. The horror film Sinners and actor Timothée Chalamet break Oscar nomination records as this year's contenders for the 98th Academy Awards are announced. And that's all from us on W News. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on X. We'll be back in a couple of hours with W News Extra.